would Star Wars be without the Empire or the Jedi Knights? Or how about Skyrim without the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood? In this episode, we're going to delve into one of the most powerful organisations of the medieval world, as a primer for world-building organisations within your own world. The Knights Templar. You may think they're just holy warriors, but they're gonna surprise you. The Knights Templar, or to give them their full name, the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, were founded in 1119 by this guy, Hugues de Payenne. They started out with only 9 knights, but the organisation grew, and fast. Their fundraising campaigns in Christendom asked for donations of money, land, and noble sons to join the order, in exchange for a spot in heaven. One pesky son and a bit of land in exchange for eternal happiness? Good trade-off. There was widespread criticism that religious men shouldn't carry swords. But the Knights Templar had massive support from Bernard de Clairvaux. He wrote a treatise championing their organisation. To quote, "A Templar knight is truly a fearless knight, and secure on every side, for his soul is protected by the armour of faith, just as his body is protected by the armour of steel. He is thus doubly armed, and need fear neither demons nor men." Bernie even went so far as to say that killing the enemies of the church was not homicide, but malicide, the killing of evil. If that's not a publicity spin, I don't know what is. And then came the real clincher. After 20 years since their founding, the Pope exempted them from all local laws. They could freely pass through borders, they paid no taxes, and they only answered to the Pope himself. Yes, guys, this made the Knights Templar a massively powerful organisation. The beginning of an organisation, and which allies they make, will determine how they rise to power, but may also be the reason for their ultimate demise. For example, the Knights Templar were free of taxes, so they could easily move money and goods around. You'll find out later how that came back to bite them in the butt. The organisation you're building might be the vision of one man, a corporate conglomerate, or a group of rebels. But that history will remain important throughout the organisation's operating time, whether they champion it or try to cover it up. For older organisations or societies, it's possible that their founding story is lost to the mists of time. Ooh. In fact, you might have myths and legends surrounding the founding of an organisation. Think Romulus and Remus, swords in stones, or investiture by deities, demons, or aliens. But back to the Knights Templar, what were these guys even doing? Well, after the First Crusade, Jerusalem was under Christian control. Christian pilgrims suddenly flooded into the Holy Land and, as any D&D'er knows, they were attacked by bandits. The founding Knights Templar sought to protect pilgrims in the Holy Land, and, as the order grew, they became holy warriors. The Knights Templar were an elite fighting force. Highly trained, well-equipped, and highly motivated. They wouldn't retreat unless outnumbered 3-1. The tanks of the medieval world, fighting in heavy armour on heavy horses, they frequently allied with other Christian armies, fighting alongside Richard Lionheart of England and Louis VII of France. And they had some epic victories. In the Battle of Montgisard, 80 underestimated knights caused the retreat of an army 26,000 strong. Not bad, little dude. Not bad. The core reason for your organisation or society is of paramount importance. You need to know why they exist and what lies at the heart of their decisions. Their aims might be the promotion of a particular idea, faith, or philosophy, to make peace or money, or to enact a political change, maybe a revolution or an invasion. And their aims might change and develop over time. The Knights Templar began by protecting pilgrims in the Holy Land, but their ultimate aim became control of the holy sites of Christianity. Which were kind of everyone else's holy sites too. I mean, guys, get your own holy sites. There are so many cool places. Just stop all wanting the same stuff. And of course, the set of beliefs that your organisation or society adheres to is also super important. Do they stick to the letter of the law, find cunning loopholes, or operate beneath the legal radar altogether? For example, an organisation with an aim to make money might do that legally, like a bank, or illegally, like a crime syndicate. Same aim, but the details are kind of important there. It's also really important to consider how your organisation displays itself. So, individually, the Knights Templar were really poor. It's even there in the name, the Poor Knights. And all the organisation's visual representations really hammer this home. Their emblem was 2 knights riding on a single horse, to emphasise their poverty. And their motto was the epitome of humility. Not unto us, O Lord, but unto thy name give glory. Basically, they didn't even claim their victories as their own. They were all for the glory of God. Templar brothers wore simple standardised uniforms, ate mainly bread and vegetables, and were tonsured, the middle of their heads shaved, like monks. Each brother swore an oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Lots of silence and praying, and no ladies. How your organisation displays itself is an important outward expression of its values and aims. If they're a subset of a larger organisation, like the Templars were part of the Catholic Church, that will also have a bearing on the way that they present themselves. Whatever you're world building for, novels, games, or anything else, the way that your organisation looks will often be the first impression that your readers or players get, and it's a great chance to set the tone. You can use all kinds of things to help with an organisation's identity. That could be a motto, a catchphrase, battle cry or song, through graphic design, heraldry, colour scheme, uniforms, haircuts, tattoos, piercings, codes of honour, signature weapon or tool, a secret handshake, or anything else. If you've got more ideas, stick them in the comments below, because that's all I could think of. So we've already said that individually the Knights Templar were poor, but the organisation was minted. So wealthy. As a military institution, a lot of their assets were military. Weapons, warhorses, stabby things, you name it, they had it. They owned all the uniforms for the brothers and all the chapter houses, castles and outposts where they lived. Your organisation will obviously aggregate assets that are relevant to it. A drug cartel might have a lab or opium farms. A country might have equipment for a standing army or crown jewels. But most of the Knights Templar's wealth came from donations, and also from the brothers themselves. When they signed their oath of poverty, they signed over all their worldly assets to the Knights Templar. This meant that the Knights Templar controlled huge swathes of land across Europe, often with serf labour attached, and also really diverse business interests. They expanded their wealth further by buying vineyards and farms, through manufacture, and by import-export. They became an international organisation, with chapters in France, Portugal, England, Scotland, and Spain, which mainly focused on finance management and recruitment. They even built their own churches and castles in a unique architectural style which borrowed both from ecclesiastical architecture and military architecture. These guys had their own architectural style. That's just too cool! But this is super interesting because a lot of real-world organisations end up owning slightly wacky assets as well. For example, Trinity College, Cambridge in England owns the industrial port of Felixstowe. I know, right? These two organisations have nothing obviously in common, but because there's a shared history there, there's an association. And that creates something super interesting and very idiosyncratic. You can do this with your own organisations as well. A crime syndicate traditionally has like a laundrette as a front, but why shouldn't that be a school or a balloon factory or, anything else? A great family might own a mine, like the Silverbloods in Skyrim, but more diverse interests could include glassworks, a religious icon workshop, or even a university. The country you're writing about might own exotic or powerful artefacts discovered on expeditions. They might have pilgrimage sites, areas of historical or scholarly interest, natural wonders, or supernatural phenomena. Think Niagara Falls, the Aurora Borealis, or, like a Reign of Manna, an alien crash site. These can have all sorts of benefits, from technological advancement to a healthy tourist trade. Also, as your world's technology advances, different resources become important. For example, lithium becomes important for lithium batteries, but maybe also a certain crystal becomes important for storing mana, or radioactive material becomes suddenly very important. The value of these resources clearly changes over time, and what your organisation controls may become worthless or vital in a second. As well as adding realism and diversity to your organisations or societies, these assets also add great conflict points. They might be seized, stolen or used up. They could be destroyed in natural disasters, experience worker riots, be reclaimed as plundered cultural heritage, or even become the source for wars, intrigues and crusades. Looking at you, Jerusalem! Whatever assets you choose to give to your organisation or society will further embed it within the concerns of the world, and will make it seem more realistic. So we've talked about how organisations interact with the world, but let's talk about how organisations function within themselves, internally. Not all Knights Templar were actually knights. It was kind of a nobles-only thing. There were priests within the order who conducted services and kept records, and then there was a third class of brothers, non-noble men, called sergeants. These guys acted as squires, guards and stewards, but some of the most important positions were reserved for them, including the de facto admiral of the fleet. All these three classes were called brothers, and all wore the Templar cross. Beyond that, the Knights Templar hierarchy was based on the Cistercian monks' order. Each brother belonged to a monastery castle with a master. Each master reported to the Grand Prior of the country, who reported to the Grand Master, and the Grand Master reported to the Pope himself. That position was not only administrative. Several Grand Masters were killed in battle, as well as one that was burnt at the stake. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. The way your organisation structures its internal power hierarchy is very important. That'll affect how it functions, but also internal politics, like power struggles or coups within the organisation. You might choose to create special ranks for your organisation, but you could also use pre-existing ones. Military, religious or scholarly ranks all give a particular flavour to an organisation. You should also choose how your organisation governs itself. It might be a meritocracy, an oligarchy, an autocracy, or anything else you feel like. And choosing the seat of power, the headquarters, is also a really crucial step in world building your organisation or society. For the Knights Templar, that was the Asker Mosque, believed to stand on the original site of the Temple of Solomon, hence the name Templars. Beyond that, each country developed its own headquarters. Here's the English Templar headquarters. Before the London skyline grew, this was a significant landmark within the city and showed off the power of the organisation. If the headquarters are specially built for your organisation, you would expect them to display mottos or heraldry, but if your organisation is clandestine, it might have its headquarters disguised as something else. A bank, a church, a mine, something that fits in, that makes sense. Another trick for that would be to have a secret entrance. Maybe you can only access it if you have certain blood, or know the magic spell, or the password. Speaking of which, how does your organisation keep their headquarters secure? Do they have security cameras, magical wards, or just a lot of guards? All of these kinds of details can give a lot of flavour to your organisation. You can make them seem sinister or positively angelic, depending on the choices you make. But it's a fact of life that nothing stays the same forever. By the end of the 12th century, instead of guarding the pilgrims themselves, the Knights Templar started guarding their valuables. A pilgrim could visit the Templar chapter house in their own country and deposit deeds and wealth in exchange for a ciphered letter. They could then present this letter to a chapter house in another country and withdraw funds against their account. If this sounds familiar, that's because the Templars invented modern banking. Thanks, guys. Good job. The pilgrims were safer because they were travelling without carrying valuables on them. And the Knights Templar? Well, they grew even more wealthy. Because money lending was illegal in Christian law, they found all sorts of loopholes, like charging rent on the properties they were holding. And eventually, some massive and important organisations became indebted to them, which didn't go too well. When you're world building your own organisations or societies, think about how the changing world will affect them. How do they refine their income streams and revenue? Do they explore for better trade routes, resources, or territory? How does the organisation find new opportunities to pursue their aim? What kind of loopholes might they employ, and what kind of secrets must they keep? And finally, we come to talk about the decline of the organisation. Now, this is always super interesting, and even if your organisation is current at the moment that you're writing about your world, you can think about how it will fall in the future, so you can start laying the seeds of that already. The decline of the Knights Templar, for example, was quite gradual. Their position was weakened by infighting with other Christian military orders, like the Knights Teutonic and the Knights Hospitalier. A series of military defeats lost them their foothold in the Holy Land, and after that, their primary purpose was no longer in effect. Support dwindled. However, because of their vast holdings and their banking enterprises, the Knights Templar was still actually very important for people in everyday life. It's worth remembering that the institution was almost 200 years old by this point. To put that into perspective, that's almost twice the age of independent Australia. Their banks were used by many, and they were important landholders and employers throughout Europe. Meanwhile, their well-trained and well-equipped standing army, which no longer had an authorised purpose, was free to cross all the borders in Europe. And this kind of made the European nobility nervous, particularly as the Knights Teutonic, which was a very similar order, had just founded their own country, and Europe was already embroiled in various wars. They didn't need more people trying to carve out land for themselves. Despite all of these reasons, it was a gradual decline, but the final blow was brutal and sudden. And it came not from military defeat, but from their banking activities. King Philip IV was massively in debt to the Knights Templar. His war with England was expensive, and he borrowed repeatedly from them without any hope of paying them back. But false rumours circulating at the time provided him with a possible way out, and he seized on them. At dawn, on Friday the 13th of October, 1307, he organised for the Grand Master of the Order and scores of other French Templars to be arrested simultaneously. Charges included homosexuality, which was illegal at that point, blasphemy, financial corruption, and fraud. Under extreme pressure from the king, Pope Clement ordered the arrest of all Templars in Christendom. Dozens were burned at the stake in Paris. Legend has it that the Grand Master of the Order cursed both King Philip and the Pope as he burned. They died within a year. In 1312, the new Pope dissolved the order. He believed that the scandal had irrevocably damaged the reputation of the order. Compare this with the Roman Empire. Ancient history professor Alexander de Mont enumerated 210 different theories about the fall of Rome, many of which are complex and multifaceted. This is often called systems collapse. Complex workings brought down by numerous small reasons, interacting to cause a devastating cascade. If your organisation or society is in the process of falling, has fallen, or you're planning for it to fall in the future, it's worth considering the conflicts which surround them. Maybe they were all arrested, or, as with the Knights Templar, scandal turned the tide of popular opinion, causing rebellion or litigious action. It could have something to do with their assets, and how the loss of them made their aim unattainable. And remember, sometimes a mysterious fallen organisation is the most exciting to write and read about. Knights Templar fanfic started as early as 1200, in a German version of the King Arthur stories. This was the beginning of an age-long association with the Holy Grail, which was actually a metaphor for Jerusalem, the thing that was all-powerful, all-holy, and unattainable. Dreamers as early as the 18th century have tried to find links between the Freemasons and the Knights Templar, and plenty have tried to revive or reinvent the Templar movement. Christian charities, far-right hate groups, and even a drug cartel, Los Caballeros Templarios. Knights Templar still crop up in popular fiction all the time. Indiana Jones, Assassin's Creed, National Treasure, and the Da Vinci Code all revolve around myths and legends of the Knights Templar. And fictional organisations inspired by the Knights Templar are even more common. For example, All Paladins Anywhere, Game of Thrones' Night Watch, the Black Templars from 40k, and the Jedi Knights, who were called the Jedi Templars in an earlier draft. I'm sure I've missed more, so if you can think of any, stick them in the comments below. As you can see from the way that writers have pounced on the Knights Templar, conspiracy theories, myths and legends are a great way to bring extinct organisations into your campaign setting or writing, even in a futuristic setting. Past organisations can be revived, or can merely have gone underground to continue their mission. They may also be, or have been, in possession of important items. A holy relic, a magical item, or even powerful technology, which may have been accidentally left behind by a time traveller or developed by their very specialised scientists. Lost treasures, secret knowledge, profane rituals, and shocking relics might all wait to be discovered in the lost ruins of an old organisation. The Da Vinci Code even dabbles in the bloodlines of gods, which could be a powerful theme for a D&D campaign or fantasy novel. Change that to the blood of aliens, and you've got a sci-fi thriller on your hands. So, to recap, there are hundreds of ways to incorporate societies and organisations into your world, whether they're already extinct, already current, or whether they're just forming. Make sure you consider their history, aims, assets, physical representations, and power hierarchies. Building these kinds of full and complex organisations will add an incredible depth and credibility to your world. So, has this video been helpful for world-building organisations and societies? Remember to take a whack at the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And if I missed something out, tell me in the comments. I always want to make these things better. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Now grab your hammer and go world build! One knight was harmed in the making of this video. I broke his hand.